All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Hey everyone, this is Tom Salemi. Welcome back to this week's episode of the DeviceTalks Weekly Podcast. You've heard me in the past talk about our DeviceTalks Tuesdays program. It's a weekly series of meetings, discussions centered around the medtech industry. It's a great opportunity for our friends and sponsors to tell their stories and to talk about how they're making medtech better. This is your opportunity to hear what we're up to on DeviceTalks Tuesdays. This week's episode of the DeviceTalks Weekly Podcast will feature a conversation that we had on Tuesday, that I hosted on Tuesday, called Where Will Innovation Emerge in 2021? The panel was great. We had Jennifer McCaney. She is the co-executive director of UCLA Biodesign. We had Jackie Mejia. She is the director of gBeta Medtech in Minneapolis. And finally, Scott Morley. He's the director in the Office of Economic Partnerships at the University of Pittsburgh. These people are on the front lines of innovation. They're really trying to find new ideas, new folks, new ways to make medtech better. So it was a great opportunity for us to sort of learn how innovation has changed under COVID, how people are innovating differently, how opportunities are emerging, where people are finding money, what sort of approaches are really gaining traction. So it was a far-ranging conversation. This is a slightly edited version. If you want to watch the whole thing, please go to DeviceTalks.com. All of our Device Talks Tuesdays are available on demand. It's a great opportunity for you to not only listen, but also watch if you want to see the entire presentation. But this is going to be a great summation of what we talked about there. And please do join us for future Device Talks Tuesdays. On February 2nd, we'll be hosting Sagentia. They'll be talking about UX design. It's going to be an important conversation, and please do check that out. Follow it up with another discussion on February 9th with our friends from Finnegan. We'll be talking about artificial intelligence. So this has been a lot of fun for me. It's a great way, again, to, just like this podcast, for me to connect with folks and to connect not only with the folks on the panel, but also the people in the audience, because we're able to answer questions and really make it more of an interactive experience. So please do check it out. Go to DeviceTalks.com to check out our Device Talks Tuesdays offering. You can watch all our past events. You can register for future events. It's a great way to remain connected. But now, of course, we need to check into this week in MedTech. I'd like to introduce my podcast partner, my co-host, Chris Newmarker, the executive editor of Life Sciences at Mass Device. Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Doing well.
Excellent. It's been quite a week. Chris, I'm back to reading the papers now. I'm not afraid anymore. And I read in the paper this morning that the new big craze is turning podcasts into TV shows.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, we're getting some traction here. What do you think? Do you think we could
It sounds great.
Get a little creative and turn this into some kind of television broadcast?
I like it. I think that's a good idea. I wouldn't mind if they could get Matt Damon to play me. I'll go with that. That sounds good.
That's a good call. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I mean, I guess we could go with the Damon Affleck thing. I've been told in my younger days I was a David Schwimmer doppelganger.
Wow.
And in my later years, Ray Romano. So those are my two big A-listers. But
I like that, podcast becoming movies. That sounds. I could go for that. That's a lot better than I heard. I read an article that there was a trend recently of young people getting into sea shanties. I mean, do you think we could do a sea shanty for let's never do that. Let's never do that.
I do have a friend who sings sea shanties, so it's not for me.
I mean, even with a glass of rum, I don't think I'd do a sea shanty. I don't know.
I'll get working on a screenplay, and my people will call your people, and all of that.
There be a podcast movie?
The Sea Shanty podcast coming to you from WTWH Media. Let's move on to MedTech, my friend. That's where we make our bread and our butter. So you've ratcheted back up. We're now up to the top 5. It's been such a busy week. So let's...
there's a lot going on.
Let's hit upon the newsmakers of this fine inaugural week.
The new markers, newsmakers. Dun, 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 dun. All right, so number 5, we got the Synthes. They landed an FDA clearance for their VELOS robotic knee system, and this is really J&J's move to really compete with Stryker in the orthosurgical robotic space. Stryker has just a ton of success with its Mako robots. J&J is looking to compete more with the VELOS system. Kind of the big thing is that it's table mounted. J&J says it can integrate into any operating room. Trying to find something a little different than that Mako robot, which is like the size of a mini fridge with an arm coming out of it. This thing can potentially be more adaptable. So we'll see how J&J does with it.
Is J&J the only company with both orthopedic and a soft tissue robotic system? I mean, they don't have Otava yet, but would they be the only one out there?
Medtronic, they've been working on, their Hugo, of course. Yeah. And then, they also have like the Mazer robots, which are working on spine. So
good point.
So I guess that makes sense. Medtronic and J&J are the 2 largest medical device companies. So they both have kind of like a foot in both of those robotic spaces right now.
Yeah, that'll be exciting to watch, a King Kong Godzilla sort of thing going at each other. But all right, well, what is number 4 on the new markers newsmakers, Chris?
Number 4 was that Philips acquired Capsule Technology and its medical device data tech. And this is a $635 million deal. So, not a small amount, or at least not a small amount for middle-class people like us, right? So, Capsule, they did, they're developing medical device integration and data technologies for hospitals, healthcare organizations, and their offering includes a medical device information platform for integration, vital signs monitoring, clinical surveillance services. So, Philips had the strategy of just being like super focused on digital health.
Absolutely.
On trying to integrate the health system. So this just looks like another another technology offering that they're acquiring to just boost themselves even more in this area.
That's interesting. And they're based up my way in North Andover. I don't know if they're part of the move. I think they're all going to be moving down to Cambridge. They were kind of going to move into the Kendall Square, or at least the Cambridge area. So we'll see if that's part of that. But that's a big deal and an exciting deal. All right.
It's a big deal. And then, Boston Sci, this is our number 3, Boston Sci, is going to acquire Preventus Solutions. Preventus, based around here in Minneapolis. They have roots down around Rochester, Minnesota, actually, where Mayo Clinic is based. But Preventus designs mobile health solutions and, remote monitoring services for patients with cardiac arrhythmias. Their wearables include the patient care platform and the Body Guardian family of monitors. So, Boston Sci, a big implantable cardiac device maker, and they're, acquiring this company that has these wearable, monitors for people with cardiac arrhythmias. So just kind of going along with this trend of, device companies in recent years have been really moving away from just being manufacturers, and they're kind of, saying, hey, we don't just like make cardiac devices. We're a, heart disease management company. And so, there we go. We got Boston Sci buying this wearables company that's, had a lot of buzz over the years.
Yeah, we talked about that last week on the podcast, just how digital medtech is it's kind of redundant, that medtech needs to have digital components to it moving forward. So not all of it maybe, but a good part. Good deal. Good number 3. Yeah. What's number 2?
Oh, number 2, we're heading back into the robotic surgery space. We have Transenterix received a CE mark for their intelligent surgical unit, for their Senhance system. And, this is artificial intelligence, to, kind of, do some, automatic, machine, vision with their system. This is one of the big strategies that, Transenterix has had to, better compete with Senhance, was to package some AI, into the system. So they're kind of moving forward. They got the CE mark for it, and they got FDA clearance for it, and in March 2020. So just kind of moving forward, and this just comes after them announcing just a week or so ago that they'd raised more than 31 million in stock offerings. So they're I said it on the title LinkedIn. They're kind of like the little robotic surgery company that could.
That's right. And their stock price took a boost too. I think they were under $1 at the end of last year. Now it was over $3 or $4 now. So yeah,
investors must be liking what they're hearing.
All right. Well, what's the big number one on the New Markers Newsmakers?
Hey, well, the big number one is we got a new president. He's doing stuff. So in fact, yesterday it was probably like COVID day at the new Biden administration White House, including releasing a 200-page document about how they're going to be doing these are like quote unquote full scale wartime plans against COVID, and there's a lot of news here for the medical device industry and what is being planned. For example, and by the way, we have a really good roundup of all the takeaways from this plan on medical device design outsourcing, run by our great managing editor, Nancy Crotty. But, Nancy was pointing out that, things in this plan include doing, full use of the, Defense Production Act, this Korean War era act, and other appropriate authorities that kind of like breakthrough log jams in the supply. So, there was a lot of debate in the past, like how much role the government, should play in, telling manufacturers to do things. And, under this new administration, they're just doing it. They're obviously moving forward and telling manufacturers to do stuff. There's, pushing toward a strategy to have more of a U.S. manufacturing base. So in the future, when we have, hopefully it'll be a while, but we have a crisis like this in the future, we won't be sitting around realizing like most of our stuff's being made overseas, that we need to combat whatever pandemic or whatnot that we're dealing with. I thought it was interesting too that Nancy spotted that there was stuff in the plan about quote unquote attractive loans to manufacturers to dramatically increase capacity. So Nancy's going to look into that more. That could be. That sounds interesting. That's something I'm sure some of our listeners would like to find out more about.
Certainly, yeah. Sounds like an opportunity to expand or maybe some more onshoring, like you said, bringing more of our manufacturing back to these shores. So
yeah, that was a big thing for Trump, and it seems like Biden too. Like Biden's saying, hey, yeah, we need to get more manufacturing back in the U.S. So that sounds like good news for people working in manufacturing in the U.S., I'd say.
Yep, good news for all of us. Yeah. Excellent. Well, this one's not on the list, but I know you were just working on a roundup of single-use endoscope tech. And that was the podcast we did last year with Ambu and Boston Scientific remains one of our more popular. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that list next week.
Yeah, and they are in that roundup. Absolutely, yeah. We're talking here on Friday, and this should be posting up on our site, Medical Tubing and Extrusion, while we speak. We're gonna have little stubs of that roundup on mass device and medical design outsourcing, but a really good roundup from our senior editor Daniel Kirsch, and I'd say it would be fair to assume that Boston Sci and Ambu are in that roundup.
All right, now it's time for our keynote conversation, which is actually with three people. I'll start this off with allowing our panelists to introduce themselves. So first, we'll hear from Jennifer McCaney. She, again, is the co-executive director of UCLA Biodesign.
Thanks, Tom. Pleasure being here today. Big fan of DeviceTalks, and if I can be there, I'm from Boston originally, so if I can be there in October, I will be, and certainly look forward to what that event will be. Jennifer McCaney, as Tom said, Executive Director of UCLA Biodesign, and also Assistant Professor at the UCLA Anderson School of Management and UCLA David Geffen School of Medicine. I wear many hats at UCLA, Associate Director of our Clinical Translational Science Institute, and am really deeply involved with entrepreneurial activities at the convergence of healthcare and technology.
Next up is Jackie Mejia. She is the Director of gBeta Medtech in Minneapolis.
So hi, everyone. I'm Jackie Mejia. I'm the director of a program called gBeta Medtech. It's part of Generator. So I work for a company called Generator. Generator is a platform for the creative economy that connects innovators, startups, founders, musicians, artists with corporations, universities, investors. We're really all about building community. And this platform that we've built includes programming like pre-accelerators and accelerator programs. But it also includes our business development team. So we have corporate programming, conferences, and fellowships that we also offer throughout the year. And like I mentioned, I'm the director of an accelerator program called gBeta Medtech. And this is a free 7-week accelerator program for early stage startups, specifically in the healthcare sector. And our goal is to help companies get ready to fundraise by offering them mentorship and coaching, educational webinars, and also introducing them to experts in the healthcare sector, serial entrepreneurs, and investors as well.
And finally, we hear from Scott Morley. Again, he is the director of the Office of Economic Partnerships at the University of Pittsburgh.
My name's Scott Morley, and I lead the Industry Partnerships team at the University of Pittsburgh. We sit inside the Office of Industry and Economic Partnerships, and our mission is to drive research collaborations between primarily pharmaceutical and medtech and other life sciences companies with the university, with the aim of translating our good science for societal impact and helping companies access the resources of the university to meet their external innovation needs. Came to the university about 2 years ago out of the medical device industry. For 15 years, the first part of my career, I worked at a startup company that was a spin out of the university in the artificial lung critical care space. It was called A-Lung Technologies. Did engineering and clinical affairs, marketing, business development over my time there. Came to the university about 2 years ago, first to run our Coulter program, which is a medtech accelerator. And then over the last year, moved into this new role as we really build out our team and seek to grow our industry partnering capability at Pitt.
All right, now that we know who the players are, let's get into the conversation. I opened up the discussion for our DeviceTalks Tuesdays with these three panelists to talk about how COVID has impacted innovation in their centers, what they're doing differently, how they're working differently with innovators. So let's follow the conversation from there. First, we'll hear from Jackie Mejia.
You know, for a program like ours, for example, where it used to be an in-person program, so we would require the companies to move here to the Twin Cities for 7 weeks. What we realized is that as soon as the program went virtual because of COVID, we saw a lot more demand for a program like ours. So, you know, the applications basically quadrupled for the last program because of this. Wow. And applicants were coming from all over the country. It wasn't just the East Coast or the West Coast. We had a whole bunch of applicants from the Midwest, but we also started to see a lot of applications from outside of the United States. So there is innovation in Europe and in Asia, and entrepreneurs that have technologies and that want to take them to the United States market. So we definitely saw through our applications that founders want to get plugged in to the Midwest healthcare sector. You know, I think that they recognize that this is certainly a healthcare hub, and because companies like Boston Scientific and 3M, for example, have responded to the pandemic in such strong ways, United Healthcare as well, I think that it's certainly shed a light on the Midwest and the fact that, you know, innovation just come out of here as well, but we can also bring innovation from other locations here because it's a stable enough community and environment to help founders move forward with their ideas.
That's great. And Jennifer, the UCLA obviously draws from across the country and the world, but I'm wondering how did COVID impact the types of people who are approaching your program, and perhaps you could also speak to how did you work differently how did they work differently once they were involved in your biodesign program?
Yeah, Tom, it's a great question. And Jackie, I certainly can appreciate the kind of new net from which we are drawing potential innovators as well as trainees for our UCLA Biodesign program. We saw a similar trend in applications, huge uptick this fall. For those interested in really kind of getting on level on innovation training and thinking about entrepreneurial opportunities in healthcare. You know, specifically to UCLA, I think, you know, being based in Los Angeles, which is currently, you know, in the heart of the pandemic right now, or in the kind of eye of the storm as we wager through COVID, Our entire program at UCLA Biodesign this year is dedicated to innovation in areas impacted by COVID-19, meaning that pulmonary critical care, my home division, and infectious disease are our two primary focus areas, meaning that our 8 innovation fellows in the biodesign program are focused on those two areas at UCLA Health, which in and of itself is the number 1 hospital in California, number 4 hospital in the nation, as ranked by U.S. News and World Report. So we're really fortunate to be able to have the kind of top-down leadership to say that your innovation focus for the year is in this specific clinical area. So in that way, we have a catheter engineer from Medtronic, a rocket scientist from SpaceX. We have an intensive care doc, a critical care nurse, and many other similar individuals with these amazing backgrounds coming together. And they're really on the front lines alongside our healthcare workers. So in that way, our program hasn't changed, but a lot of that remote innovation work, Tom, has changed, in that we're using a lot of things like Miro boards and two different technologies or 3 different technologies at once while we're on Zoom to try to recreate some of those in-person innovation aha moments, if you will, that are a little bit perhaps harder to come by, but we're getting time back because we're not traveling on the 405. For those of you that are from Southern California in the audience today, we're certainly gaining that valuable traffic and commuter time back to spend more time thinking about our innovations.
Scarlett, how are you seeing things at the University of Pittsburgh? And I wonder whether just broadly has the pall that COVID cast over the world and over the country, has that made people feel, in your perspective, more innovative or maybe less inclined to want to try something because there's just some degree of uncertainty out there when it comes to, I don't know, for everything from getting day to day to getting funding, et cetera, et cetera?
I think like everybody is reflected here, things changed a bit, and it wasn't necessarily good or bad, or you can't sum it all up one way or the other. There was good and bad throughout it all. And, some of the good things that we saw is that we think our faculty and our innovators on campus actually took some time as campus was shutting down more or less back in March to take the time to write up those invention disclosures, spend the time with patent counsel, button up IP things they wanted to get done, maybe make some applications to some translational grant programs, think about business models, participate in our early stage, I-Corps type programs. And with all that, we had this kind of influx of new innovation and a whole bunch of work that surrounded COVID work directly with the university, put about $1 million out there for translational research projects, and our health system investing even more. All that said, where did we have some hangups and some changes? I think we all got through the we're going to work remotely thing fairly quickly. And, by now we've got labs back up and running and, all the critical research up and running. But there's certain things that just haven't fully come back online. Clinical trials that are kind of early stage feasibility studies that aren't deemed kind of critical right now are still either slow or just kind of coming back online. So those have been delayed. We have projects that were kind of in implementation just when the pandemic hit from like an IT standpoint in the healthcare system. We were going to pilot some new programs in the surgical setting, for instance, just because of, again, the demands on the health system during that time. That all kind of came to a halt and had to be paused and then slowly ramped back up. But with those, there's always a silver lining. With those things, it takes some time to do some additional refinement on those prototype products or whatever it might be, and then hit the ground running when we can't get to it.
Next, I wanted to talk about the impact that COVID had not on innovation itself, but on the healthcare system upon which innovation is trying to improve. Has the financial impact of the disease changed the algorithm, changed the equation, changed the way that entrepreneurs and innovators are looking at problems to solve? So we'll open up this question. Scott Morley from the University of Pittsburgh will kick us off.
At the end of the day, though, that whether you adopt the triple or the quadruple aim of healthcare or whatever the term is, we're after the same things. There's got to be solid value propositions, improved through improved quality of care, reduced costs, improvements for the workforce. And, when we look at it at Pitt, in collaboration with our health system, UPMC, we've got the unique perspective of being able to look at it as an integrated payer provider, those technologies, and make those assessments, at least for our internal purposes. Externally, as we work with partners, for the most part, our partnering activity around research and innovation has remained strong. And my perspective is that the industry, and more of our work on partnering is on the pharma side than on medtech, but that's remained quite strong during this time. Certainly there have been organizations, though, and those that have suffered economic impact more due to reduction in elective procedures, for instance. They've seen their R&D budgets go into a state of flux and unsure if they can partner. Things they were thinking about licensing and doing deals on have to slow down. So, again, not universal across the board on that front.
Jennifer, you're working closely to hospital system as well. Your fellows, I'm sure, go into the hospital and assess where we are and what they see. So how have things changed from your perspective in that regard?
Yeah, Tom, I think one of the biggest things is that we always think about in the early stage basis, we're not designing for the healthcare system of today, we're designing for the healthcare system of tomorrow. And that's a result of COVID. The healthcare system of tomorrow is a lot closer to where, today than we thought it was going to be, in terms of telemedicine, in terms of decentralization of care. And so what I really encourage our fellows and also our faculty in our accelerator program is to think about what is that healthcare system of the future? And, from the flip side of the table, on the investor side, I see a lot more questions around who's going to buy it, who's going to pay for it, whether or not that's a function of the hospital health system bottom line being reduced, by hundreds of billions of dollars in 2020. I think there's going to be greater scrutiny around purchasing decisions potentially, just in the near term. What's that going to look like in a long-term scenario where we have, hopefully, fingers crossed, and national emergency is extended until I believe it's March. With the policies around telehealth, I'm hoping a lot of that's here to stay, and really being able to think about innovating more, solutions that are going to function in that telehealth, decentralized healthcare system that is a lot closer than we thought it was going to be in the future.
Jackie, are the ideas you're seeing gBeta, are they different than perhaps they were a year ago because people are adapting their innovation for a new world?
Yeah, I definitely think that, before, consumers had a very similar expectation. We need to figure out who our doctor is. We need to make an appointment, fill out a whole bunch of paperwork every time we go into a different office, etc. And now I think expectations have changed because we responded so quickly to these circumstances, right? So we moved toward this digital era, and we're probably not going to move backwards, right? That's probably not going to happen. And so we've definitely seen an uptick in innovation when it comes to digital health. And not just that, but, when it comes to medical devices, specifically too, there's a big push towards remote patient monitoring and also integrating these devices with cloud-based technologies, right? So that they can collect data on a daily basis on demand, and they can share that information with healthcare systems and then ultimately with the patient, because I think now it's all converging towards the patient. What does the patient want? How can we make this a patient-centric system? And I think, when it comes to the economics, you definitely have to showcase what Scott was saying. You still need to showcase that, this is going to improve the quality of care, that there's a strong value proposition, and this is going to reduce costs. But I do think that, last year, many things were put on hold. And I think Scott also referred to this earlier, right? Certain procedures were just paused, and that means that a lot of the innovation that was happening was sort of put on hold for a while. I think that was a huge challenge last year for many innovators because they weren't seeing investment coming into their companies. They were seeing that investment sort of shift more towards the digital health startups, for example. Angel investment, for example, individual angels became more cautious about investing, and so they weren't writing as many checks. And then for VCs, even though they probably had already raised the money for the funds for last year, and they were still actively seeking startups to invest in, I think that they were being more cautious. So the due diligence was becoming more robust. It was becoming longer. And so there was a change in how investment happened in the space for sure, and an opportunity to move forward with innovation. At least that's what I saw with some of the companies that I worked with.
So we talked about the innovators. We talked about the impact of COVID on the healthcare system. Now, what about the corporates? Corporates have grown to be great partners for early stage ventures and early stage groups like gBeta. I asked our panelists whether or not corporates are looking at MedTech any differently, whether they're looking at innovation any differently. So, Scott Morley, once again, we'll kick it off.
Yeah, I mean, just to address the corporate side first, absolutely there is. And, we continue to be engaged in growing our the list of companies we work with at Pitt. What's interesting about the MedTech space in terms of partnering with the universities is that, from a kind of a late stage asset development, most universities aren't good at that in the MedTech space. Largely, we're not making something that's ready to, say, go kind of out of our labs and to human clinical trials in a short time frame. And that's just kind of the nature of the type of the development that goes on at most universities, at least. There's certainly exceptions to that. So we work with a lot of early stage assets that we're trying to put through a process of technical de-risking and business de-risking such that they're at the point they're investable and ready to be spun out. But on the research side, the large corporates aren't, in our case, coming so much to us for what's the next thing we can license from you. Certainly have those discussions, but more, what are some of the things you have access to in the university environment that we don't have access to that can fuel our innovation from a research standpoint? And this is where we get into things like, really innovative in vitro and in vivo models, access to aggregated, de-identified data sets that can be interrogated for research questions under the appropriate approvals and whatnot, expertise in modeling, visualization, clinical expertise is a big one. So those are the kind of things that we're in very frequent conversations with early stage feasibility studies. Now, where it got a little tricky, as I said before, is in the things that we had to be kind of live doing work, whether that be a early stage kind of 10 patient feasibility study, or doing lab work where we had to have people in person in labs doing work. That got slowed down in the first 6 months of the pandemic and has largely been able to ramp back up. So we're playing a little bit of catch up now. On the early stage front, our academic innovators remain as interested in ever as doing this. I think most of them are not planning anyways to make a leap out of academia and take the company out on their own. So there's kind of the security blanket of their day job in the university anyways. And that's fine. That's for most of them exactly how it should be. What we have to do, though, is continue to fill our network full of entrepreneurs that have an interest in taking these technologies out and building companies around them and also have access to capital and help facilitate that access to capital so we can get these companies spun out and off the ground. And certainly that degree of risk tolerance, I think, everybody kind of took a step back and had to figure that out for the first part of this time. But we're, again, seeing that ramp back up. We've got a steady stream of folks coming through our, various ways we engage, looking for new opportunities, looking for, entrepreneurial opportunities to start businesses around on the MedTech and the pharma side.
Jennifer, I want to get that same question to you in a moment, but Jackie, I just wanted to follow up with you on the corporate side of things. gBeta works with corporates. If you could tell us who you're working with, and I'm just wondering, have you seen that relationship change at all? Is it more? Are there greater interest, less interest, and what's the sense you're getting?
Yeah, I don't know if the relationship has changed much. For context, the gBeta MedTech program is a sponsor-led program, so it's free for founders. We don't invest in the founder, so we're not taking up any equity. It's completely free. And this program is sponsored by Boston Scientific. That's been our major sponsor since 2018. We also receive additional support from Medical Alley Association, the Mayo Clinic, the University of Minnesota. And recently, we partnered with University Enterprise Labs, which is an incubator here in the Twin Cities. And we received support from BARDA, the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, which is a government agency part of HHS. And, I think what we've seen continued support from these organizations. I think, going back to Jennifer's initial point at the beginning of the talk, focus areas have changed, and we've seen that within corporations as well, them wanting to fund, technologies that were related to our response to COVID. That's something we've seen. But I think that, the biggest thing that I've seen is sort of the relationships that have come about between different corporations, right? You start to see collaboration between corporations that perhaps normally wouldn't collaborate. And so I think that this sense of community definitely was strengthened during this time. And so, supporting programs like ours is definitely a priority for a lot of these corporations and also government entities, but also finding ways to collaborate and communicate with other organizations, perhaps, their competitors, to get products out there, to move innovation much quicker so that we can respond to the pandemic. So we rely on relationships with corporations to a really great extent to make the program happen. But also, our business development team works really closely with corporations as well. Let's say, for example, we work with Boston Scientific, and our goal is how can we help these corporations, these organizations create or enhance their innovation or their venture arm. So we're helping them connect with innovators in this space. And we've definitely seen a change in the focus area, like I mentioned before, but facilitating those connections, not just beneficial for the corporations, but also beneficial for those innovators, those early stage founders that need to understand, how do I start building relationships and with these organizations? Can I do pilot studies with these organizations? So I don't think that the relationship has changed much between our organization and corporations. I certainly think, it's strengthened to some extent. But what I have seen is that among the different corporations and organizations that we work with, there has been more connection between them, finding ways to work together to move forward and accelerate the commercialization of many products that are coming to market.
Do you think that commercialization, again, is just sort of we're all pulling together in a crisis sort of thing, it'll dissipate once we're back to normal, or is there something longer lasting there?
Yeah, I don't think it will dissipate. I think that one of the things that we're starting to realize is that power of collaboration and working together. I hope it doesn't dissipate. It just shows how much faster we can get things, from an idea stage really to commercialization. And we've seen that to some extent also with like healthcare systems and digital health too, right? Now, for example, it's about patient care. Now patients want more data of their own health in their hands. And so in order to do this, there has to be some sort of collaboration, bringing different platforms together. And so I think that sort of integration between different systems and collaborative projects will continue after this. At least I hope so.
Jennifer, there's a lot there to talk about. Let's start with corporations. Do you work with, how do you work with the corporate community? Do you at all? What's the relationship like?
Yeah, it's a good question, Tom. I think that, Jackie and Scott really spoke deeply to how corporations interact with the academic setting. And certainly at UCLA Biodesign, we work closely with many of our industry partners in Northridge and Orange County and beyond. I think in terms of, what we haven't touched on in the discussion is the emerging importance of pharma in the medtech space. And I think that the big linker there is digital, right? Because as digital becomes its own industry, and whether it's gonna sit under pharma or AdvaMed, if you will, or we're thinking kind of the industry trade associations, I have seen AdvaMed kind of make a big push for, with the MedTech Digital Conference and other spaces. And we've seen that on the academic setting side too, where, as digital kind of falls under this medtech umbrella, and in my own rationale, I place digital medtech because CDRH is regulating software, and software is a medical device, as we know. So we've seen increasing engagement. Genentech is one of our program sponsors at UCLA Biodesign, and I think that we're going to see continued engagement from pharma on the medtech side because digital is building a stronger bridge between our two industries.
Scott, in Pittsburgh, you guys have a great robotics community, so much great tech in the area. Have you seen any industries that maybe haven't traditionally touched medtech or healthcare before kind of gravitating toward the space?
It's a good question. I think we've seen exactly what you mentioned, Jennifer, regarding the pharma partners we have coming to us with questions more along the lines of healthcare data. I'm not going to call it digital health. I don't even, what do you call digital health? But, can we somehow have discussions about using healthcare data to, really realize the potential of personalized medicine at scale? And what does that look like for the future? And, certainly we're exploring ways, knowing that the only way to to scale that in the future is through co-development with industry partners. How can we do that in a responsible way from an academic standpoint, along with our partners at the health system? Other industries that are kind of coming at us, new. We have a very strong intersection between medicine and engineering, and we will find often companies that we never thought had an interest in the medical space coming to us and saying, "That's really interesting. We're interested in getting into advanced materials for medical devices or other kind of primarily medical devices, but also kind of in the regenerative medicine biomaterial space." And have some projects underway with a variety of folks that probably don't advertise that they're in that business, but they believe they have certain capabilities, and with our collaboration can grow that. So on the robotics front, obviously here in Pittsburgh, with our friends down the street at Carnegie Mellon, huge presence in the robotics industry, also autonomous vehicles. We've got some robotics work that goes on at the University of Pittsburgh, and we do have a lot of collaborative work that goes on between the universities. It's kind of a unique situation where we can put together, in many cases, the computational power of CMU with an academic medical center and all 6 schools of the health sciences to really kind of cover a variety of different projects. So a lot of things that get done in collaboration with those folks bring a lot of power to it. I'm involved in a project that went through our Coulter program here, and it's one of our in our Medtech accelerator program, just as an example. And it's some advanced clinical decision support tools that are being developed for the perioperative environment. So pre and post, pre-surgical, surgical, and post-surgical, and really done in a nice collaboration with a CMU data scientist and a Pitt physician. And terrific to see those kind of things progress towards commercialization.
But Jackie, I did want to just hear from you also on this question. Are some of the applications you're getting people who are saying, I'm moving from whatever previous industry I had in before, I really want to make a difference here in medtech because we're in healthcare. Yeah. Are you seeing some new blood?
Yeah, I guess, in general, it's hard for me to answer that question, but, I think, for example, about cybersecurity, right? And how, for instance, now if we want our healthcare, systems to essentially go online, for us to be able to have services online, so see our doctors online, and also to access our data online, all of this comes with challenges as well. How do we keep that secure, for example? And so we're seeing also that, for cybersecurity, for instance, there's this huge opportunity to move into the healthcare space now to ensure that all of our data is safe. So I do think that to some extent there are people that are shifting their focus. I don't know if I've seen a few people that have nothing to do with healthcare, start to move into this space. But I think it's more, individuals that perhaps are physicians, therapists, for example, in the mental health space. We've seen a huge uptick in startups in that space. And I think many times it's individuals that maybe never thought of themselves as entrepreneurs, as, I'm going to go and start this app so that I can offer online services for my patients. But they've seen the need for it, and they see that this is a time where they feel comfortable taking that leap because, it's a good time to do it. So I think even people that work within the healthcare space see an opportunity to innovate. So we've definitely seen, I think individuals that are not necessarily, your serial entrepreneur come into this space and want to, provide some of their expertise and bring something new to the market that they think is essential during these times.
And I do want to get to the question that we have from the audience, but Scott, I kind of started the round robin with you. I didn't know if you had any more to add in terms of the individuals who wanted to move into healthcare. Anyone in your institution sort of migrating this way when they hadn't really thought about it before?
Well, I think what's always wonderful to see is our faculty and our staff and our students that are interested in taking some sort of entrepreneurial plunge and see that growing every year. I mean, at Pitt last fiscal year, I think we did nearly 20 startups out of the university. And, it's a testament to our faculty, realizing that for their research to have societal benefit and impact, they've got to get it spun out. They've got to get it out to a company, either via a startup of a new co or through a license. And with that, and with all the work that we're doing and Jennifer and Jack are doing and many other programs out there to build awareness amongst faculty that this is a really meaningful way to create impact from your research, we're starting to see those results. And we're really excited by that, energized by it. I think what I'd just add to all the folks out there, coming to this presentation today from industry is that we need your help. Absolutely. And we need your help in many ways. But, if you've got an interest in this kind of early stage academic translation, please kind of make yourself known to your alma mater, your local university, whoever it is. Everybody's always looking for mentors and advisors and folks with industry expertise, because I can't stress enough how important that is. As I ran the Coulter program at Pitt, a couple of years ago, our Medtech accelerator, we spend, frankly, much more time on business de-risking, what's the clinical strategy, what's the regulatory strategy, buttoning up IP issues, than we did on how to plan out the last round of lab experiments that need done, the killer experiment or whatever. Usually that's pretty well in order, but we got to put a business model around something to get it to the point that somebody can picture it as a new co and feel that it's sufficiently de-risked to invest in it. So, there's lots of ways to get involved, and I just encourage the audience to do that if it's of interest, because we can always use the help.
And one of the benefits of our Device Talks Tuesdays format is the ability to field questions from the audience. I wish we could do that on this podcast, but we can't. But we can on Device Talks Tuesdays. And the question we asked the panelists came from a startup executive who asked, yes, it's great to talk about incubators and all the assistance goes with them, but what about funding? Are these folks seeing venture capitalists or investors step up to commit to really early stage ventures? Let's listen to what they have to say.
I think that there are many barriers to early stage activity kind of gaining momentum. Funding is just one of them. I think that if we look at the data from last year, certainly a large proportion of that data was going to later stage companies, but we still saw significant investment in early stage companies. Specifically, within our program, we're both a training program and innovation program. So we're really looking at, for those of you that are familiar with technology readiness levels, which are often used in defense and other industries, we're looking at technology readiness level like 1 to 4. So we're really pre-commercialization in terms of where UCLA Biodesign sits within our campus ecosystem, if you will. And we have follow-on mechanisms that address, similar to Scott, kind of address that critical translational piece between academics and industry. I can say that, within the LA ecosystem, being not one of those traditional medtech hubs like Boston or San Francisco or Minneapolis, we have seen critical infrastructure emerge, such as some of that wet lab space that's available for companies making the leap from academics to industry. So sometimes traditionally in Los Angeles, it was harder to find space to keep your company in Los Angeles because we didn't have the appropriate commercial real estate infrastructure to support your venture directly in our region. So I've seen an increase in those, and particularly in the past 2 to 3 years. Alexandria Real Estate Ventures is located in Pasadena. They've started capitalized several projects in that space. And as well as the other kind of big barrier to us is those super early stage investors, right? So micro funds, angel, friends and family. We don't see the big VCs coming to us at academic institutions. We really see bridge funders like angels and others that are going to be doing that initial high risk investment versus some of your blue chip VCs, particularly where we sit on the academic side. So I hope Joel, that helps answer some of your question. I'll pass it off back to Tom and Jackie and Scott.
Hold on a second. I just want to follow up. So have you had any efforts that have received outside funding from anyone, from angels or anybody in 2020? And if so, what type of investor was committing that capital? Were there angels out there doing support? What other type of people might be committing capital to some of your projects? Jennifer, I don't want to specifically speak about others' deals, but I can say that we have had projects come out of UCLA that have received venture funding in the healthcare space from angels. Jackie, how about? From angels. Okay, great. Jackie, yeah. And who's providing funding to your projects?
Yeah, this is the question that always comes up in every conversation that I have with founders. So I have office hours available. If anyone is listening is interested in talking to me, you can always go to our website and sign up for office hours. I always hear the same thing that, the founders are saying, investors are telling me that I need to develop my technology further, but how do I do that if I don't have any money? And so, I feel like Jennifer is right. This is where family and friends comes into play, and angel investors and angel investment groups. I think in the healthcare sector, it's a tough round for sure to tackle, because you really want to approach people that understand the space to some extent. And maybe when you're raising from family and friends or angel investors, it's that you're not necessarily getting at that expertise. And so if you can raise from family and friends, it's a great way to start. Most of the startups that I work with, that's how they start off. And with, family, friends, angel round of, let's say, roughly 500K. So they don't open up a huge round, and it's hard. It's challenging. They want VCs to start off right from the start, and you don't see that. And so that is one option. But I would say another option, which is the option that we see quite often as well, is a lot of the founders are seeking partnerships with researchers at universities, like the researchers that Jennifer and Scott work with, right? They're seeking those partnerships so that they can start those initial studies, in an academic institution, and so that they can apply for non-dilutive funding, like grants, like SBIR funding, for instance. And it is a long road to take. It's not as quick as if you are fundraising from angels or family and friends. It requires a lot of patience, but we've seen some success. So, for example, in the fall of 2020, 3 of our portfolio companies received SBIR funding. I think one received $150K for a phase 1. Quench Medical, another company, received $400K for a phase 1, and then $2 million for a phase 2 grant. HabitAware, another company, received $1 million from an SBIR phase 2 NSF grant. So it's definitely a route you want to take. And then when it comes to raising, private investment, just in December, so this is not all of 2020, but just in December, we had 2 of our companies close rounds. I can't disclose who they are yet, because they haven't shared the good news yet. But we had, one company that closed a $2 million seed round in December. And that was mainly from, they had mainly VCs in there and some angels. And then we have another company, for instance, that in December also, they closed a $500K seed round. I think it was one VC and then mainly angels. So I think it does depend a lot on the network that you're building, the relationships that you're building, and how you're approaching. It's challenging, and not everyone is going to get funding, unfortunately. It's definitely tough. And so that's where programs like ours try to help, right? If you apply to an incubator or like a program like Scott's and Jennifer's, or a program like gBeta Medtech, what we're trying to do to some extent as well is, how can we expand your network in a meaningful way? How can we put you in touch with individuals that have, networks of investors, angels, or put you in touch directly with angel investors and VCs at an early stage, so that you can get an idea of what you need prior to, standing in front of these individuals and asking for money. And so, I would say, stay positive as you can. It's definitely a tough road, but there are different options. You don't always have to just seek private investment in order to move forward with your innovation.
All right, Scott, you've had plenty of time to write down names and emails and read them off to attendees. So, no, seriously, how do you? I'm sure you get this question in Pittsburgh as well. What's the funding environment like there? Who's stepping up to helping these companies?
Sure, it's it's a great question, of course, and I would everything that Jennifer and Jackie mentioned is holds true here. As was noted by Joel, the venture community, the data seems to show they're much more interested on the medtech side and the later stage deals. So where do we fill the gaps? In Pittsburgh, we're doing 2 things. At the university side, we're doubling down on our investment in gap funds and mentorship, and really making sure we've got infrastructure in place to put projects that have high potential on a commercialization trajectory. and surrounding them with the resources and the expertise to help them build value and accomplish key de-risking milestones. So that's a combination of funding. It's our advisory networks, it's structured programming, et cetera. We run that through what's called our Innovation Institute, which is our tech transfer office, and our organization is in the Office of Economic Partnerships as part of that. The other thing we're doing as a community in the Pittsburgh area, and this is also supported by the university, is standing up an external accelerator. And that program is called LifeX, and the university recently started that to provide not just a physical place, but similar to our on-campus incubator, but externally, the resources, the mentoring, the support for our emerging companies that are on their path to commercialization. We think that's really, really important. The funding is, in the Pittsburgh area, we're very fortunate to have fair bit of kind of family office and high net worth individual angel investor funding. We're, compared to other regions on the VC front, much lower. So we, for the early stage deals, rely largely on those family offices and angel investors, as well as some of our regional economic development organizations that have some public money made available to them to make investments. And that ecosystem certainly is growing year by year and gets more and more sophisticated, and I think we're beginning to see the fruits of it. This year we've seen a number of pit startups well-funded in everything from seed rounds to large Series B, C rounds on the order of tens of millions of dollars. And those came, those ones that are getting the big rounds came from work that we did years ago. So it takes that kind of time, of course.
All right, well, that's a wrap. Chris Newmarker, tell the folks how they can find you on social media.
You can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker, and I'm on Twitter, handle @Newmarker. Always happy to talk with people. Heck, when this pandemic hopefully goes away in a few months, maybe you'll see me with a sandwich board in downtown Minneapolis. You never know.
A few months, God bless you, sir. I hope you're right. Dr. Fauci didn't warm my heart too much yesterday talking about the fall, but we'll see where things go.
Exactly. Got to be optimistic. I mean, you're right. It could be the fall, could be like, as long as this goes away before the before the end of baseball season, because it'd be nice to get my kids to a baseball game. That's all I can say. I do miss baseball. That's one of my things I miss most. I am also on social media, of course, on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi, on Twitter @Medtech Tom. Great to connect with you there. Please do subscribe to this podcast. Please do use those social media channels to share this podcast. Tell your friends, tell your colleagues. We'd love to have more people listening. And once again, if you subscribe, then you'll have these podcasts sent directly to you. You won't have to wait until we post it up on our websites or our social media. So just push the subscribe button. It's super easy. We're everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. We'll be there for you. So that's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the DeviceTalks Weekly Podcast. Tune in next week. We'll have another great episode of this podcast waiting for you. Stay classy.